Sarah, would you like to guess what the gross revenues of this company are, Truth Social? Just how many dollars they took in, period, irrespective of spending?
12 million.
I think
800,000.
800,000, yeah. It's in the news. 800,000. $800,000.
Truth Social took in less revenue than a great many Substacks. There are dozens of people on Substack who simply write newsletters by themselves from their living room who brought in more revenue last quarter than Donald Trump's social media company.
What are their expenses?
And their net $327 million. Hello, everyone. This is JVL. Welcome to The Next Level with my best friend, Sarah Longwell. And sitting in for my other best friend, Tim Miller, is my actual real-world friend and fellow Bulwark colleague, Sonny Bunch. Sonny, it is great to have you back.
What do you mean? Like actual real-world friend? What am I?
Well, I mean, I've known Sonny since he was 17 years old. I met Sonny when he was in high school.
I met Sonny when he was in college.
I was in second year at Mr. Jefferson's University.
That is not true. You were first a high school student, and then you came back once you were at Mr. Jefferson's University.
No, that's not true. I know my story. JVL, stop telling my truths
wrong. I'm going to tell your story for you. You don't get to speak, Sonny.
Okay.
Do you know Sonny
well,
and
I'll tell your story for you.
I knew Sonny while he was in college. He and I went to the Czech Republic together when we were just kids.
Yes, very young.
Very
Adventures in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Speaking of young people making bad decisions, Hunter Biden convicted on 3 charges today. This week, sorry, not today, in Delaware. And I have a bee in my bonnet on this because we have a Trump-appointed prosecutor who Joe Biden held on at the Department of Justice. When Joe Biden became president, typically the new president replaces all of the U.S. attorneys. And instead, because this attorney, David Weiss, had an ongoing investigation into his son, President Biden asked him to stay on. He said, will you please stay on the job and keep investigating my son? Hunter Biden, this prosecutor then, shortly before bringing indictments, requested of Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. He said, I would like to have independent counsel status so that I'm not even theoretically within the chain of command of the Department of Justice. And the Attorney General said, yep, great, got it. Made him an independent counsel. The 2 judges in the Hunter Biden prosecutions, the judge in California and the judge in Delaware, both Trump appointees. And the Biden reaction to all of this has been, got to respect the legal process, which is exactly what we want. Yes. Exactly what we want. And yet, crickets. Nobody is like, boy, that President Biden really did everything we want presidents to do when his own kid was, in a whole lot of trouble. And Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I wouldn't say no one. I mean, I think
me and Jill are the only ones giving him credit.
No, I think sort of the regular mainstream media and everybody's talking about this is a real stark contrast. And it is a real stark contrast. And I think that the stark contrast is good for Biden. Look, I think that I'm just going to speak as a optics politically. I think this is good. I think it's really good that Hunter was found guilty. Sounds like he was guilty. And it's probably this would have never been brought if his father wasn't Joe Biden. But
it is illegal, and he did do it.
But it's illegal, and he
guilty.
did it. So he's guilty, and so he's guilty. And I think it's interesting. So we were doing a little preview. We were doing a group of Utah 2-time Trump voters, not specifically Mormons, just Utah. And he's definitely not getting credit from that crowd. That crowd's like, well, boy, if they got him on this, he must have been really guilty because our justice system is crooked. So he must have been so guilty. But listen, for swing voters or for people who it does make it harder to do the 2-tiered justice system. Like you have to be really bought in to kind of Trump cinematic grievance universe to not see the contrast here. And
you say that it makes it harder, Sarah, but I have faith in the American electorate that they'll be able to mount that obstacle. And they'll be able
Super
to
Trump
ignore
voters
this.
will. But not swing voters as much.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a fairly clear split I'm seeing in my little social circles between the people who are like pretty hardcore Trump guys who are like, well, they tried to give him a sweetheart deal and that fell apart. And, this is just this was they kind of foisted on them and blah, blah, blah. And also the they're getting him on this, but they're not getting him on the real corruption.
Yeah,
they're not getting him on the real corruption.
This is a dodge to protect Joe Biden.
Or and also there's the third argument, which is my favorite argument, which is that Joe Biden is sacrificing his son like a pawn on the chessboard to make a better case for getting Trump. That's the real goal here. And I whatever, all that is fine. But I do think that is fairly contained to the people the non-swing voters, people who are voting for Trump no matter what.
Is it Donald Trump fired the FBI director because the FBI director wouldn't give him the loyalty which Trump personally demanded? When Trump then said, he would like it if maybe he could just take it off a little bit of the investigation of the Russia stuff, and asked him if he could, just give it a pass for the Michael Flynn thing. And when the FBI director didn't do it, he fired him, which has never happened before in our republic. And I asked
Donald Trump is bad.
Do you want us to sit here and say Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump on issues like this? Yes, he is.
Granted.
Say it.
Thumbs up.
Say it. I feel like Sam Kinison. Say it.
Joe Biden, greater sign Donald Trump on issues of legal accountability. I don't know.
I am very concerned that nobody cares, and that this is going to wind up being like inflation or crime or the GDP or all the other things where people believe one thing and reality is another. And then we're going to see polls showing, they're both corrupt. Swing voters say 65% of swing voters say that both Biden, and I'm just making that up. I'm not saying, but that this is what's coming down the pike to us. And there
is a lot of they're all corrupt, including in the swing voting groups. And it honestly, it depends a pretty good deal on how plugged in people are, because what's interesting about Hunter Biden is that voters, if you're in the MAGA, Hunter Biden crime, the Biden crime family, that's one way. But there's most people take the Hunter Biden stuff actually with a great deal of compassion. They're everybody's got one of these guys in their family, black sheep, drug addictions, a real problem. People actually approach it that way, but they still also just think broadly, and this is, I think, been part of a long slide in our faith in institutions, faith in politicians. The expectation now is not that politicians will behave in a way that's ethical, honorable, but that they're all corrupt inherently. And look, the Hunter Biden stuff in many ways was always about providing a counterbalance narrative of smoke to the real fire of Trump's criminality. And it has accomplished a decent amount of that, because in a headline-driven vibes media environment, people are just kind of oh yeah, this Hunter Biden stuff, and maybe Biden knew something, and it just throws a little dirt on him, and that's what they wanted. That's what the Republicans wanted, and I do think that they have gotten that. So I think they've taken some of Biden's Biden's a good stand-up guy, and they've besmirched him a little bit with it.
Besmirched. I like that. Best living president, Joe Biden. There. This episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store, which, by the way, is the worst. And count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. You can make delicious food a priority this summer with quick, convenient recipes delivered right to your door. All you need to do is choose your meals and select a delivery date. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning, the shopping, and most of the preps all you have to do is open your box and get cooking. Their Taste of Summer series includes Old Bay shrimp and sausage, grilled steak, lettuce wraps, and so much more. And one of our other sponsors, Green Chef, is now owned by HelloFresh, giving us all a wider array of meal plans to choose from. And when you sign up today, you'll unlock free appetizers for life. Free apps! So you can enjoy a little pre-dinner treat with an appetizer of your choice in every HelloFresh box for free. I will just level set and be quite honest. I am not a live to eat guy. I'm more of an eat to live guy. And with children, everything is about finding, for me, the lowest amount of effort that we can input in order to keep our children supplied with calories. And that's where HelloFresh really shines in our family, because you don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to think about what the meal is. You can tell them the things that, like, don't include anything with these ingredients because my kids won't eat them. And then they just ship it to you, and you throw it in the fridge, and then you make it the next day. And the stuff is quick. Like, it's not like, slaving over the stove for an hour and a half. And the kids generally like it. It's just good. It's easy. Go to HelloFresh.com/thenextlevelapps for free appetizers for life. One appetizer item per box while subscription is active. That's free appetizers for life at HelloFresh.com/thenextlevelapps. Sign up with America's #1 meal kit today. Shortly before we got on, we got inflation reports. So this is the week of reports. We got a jobs report, then a crime report, then an inflation report. Inflation came in lower than expected. No change month to month. We are flat month to month. And over a year ago, running at only 3.4%, which is right near our target. The target is 3%. This is great news. And it follows news on the jobs front, where we were expected to add 180,000 jobs in May. Instead, we added 272,000 jobs. And then the first quarter crime stats came in from the FBI. All crime down 15.7%, murder down 26.4%, property crime. I won't give you all the crime is way down.
Crime is down. Gas prices are down. Inflation is not rising. People talk about it as cooling. I'm always a little bit like, math was never my strongest subject. So some of these economic indicators cause me like brain bleeds. And so it's like with inflation, it's not that it's come down, right? Still, the prices are still high, but it has stopped rising, right? That's what these numbers.
Sonny, did you want to field this?
We're not deflating. Deflating would be bad.
Yes.
Because if prices start going down, that's deflation. My understanding is that that's very bad. You don't want deflation.
Very bad.
Okay. No, I always get my biggest complaint with JVL's take on all of this is that you are frequently too dismissive of inflation, which, I understand the rate is what it is. The rate is coming down. It's getting back under control. Things are and stuff always gets more expensive. Inflation is just a fact of life. Things get more expensive. That's how it works. But I will just say that when look, I think I've told this story before. When I moved to Dallas from DC, my grocery bill went from about $200 a week to about $150 a week. It was like getting a $50 a week savings, and that was great. It was like, oh yeah, this is lovely. I like living here. Then after in the Biden administration, that bill has gone to more like $220 a week. So it's not just well above what it was when I moved here. It's above what I was in DC. So like regardless of whether or not the rate of that increase has slowed, it is still a big jump. It is a big jump. There was a huge amount of inflation early on in his presidency, and even if it's slower now, it's still there. It's cumulative. Inflation is cumulative, and that is what people are feeling. And I don't think it is useful to do the Lurleen says thing that JVL likes to do. I think you have to acknowledge things got very expensive very quickly. They are getting less expensive now, less quickly. But there's the price is what it is, and that's what people are responding to.
Sure. If I can just defend myself for a moment, 6 weeks after Joe Biden was inaugurated, I wrote a column warning about inflation. 6 weeks.
Sure.
I was ringing the bell on inflation a full year before anybody else. And I talked, inflation was bad. And I was very I was very alarmist about inflation while it was bad. The thing is, it's been receding now for like 18 months. And so I'm just early to everything. I was early to the danger of inflation, and I was early to the reality that we've moved back and that wage growth has now outpaced inflation.
Yeah, the aptitude of your punditry is irrelevant to this particular question. I mean, this is about whether
about
or not
voters' feelings.
Yeah,
It's vibes.
it is.
The economy is vibes. That's all it is.
The economy's I'm sorry, the economy does have a fair amount of vibes baked into it. I'm going to split the difference between you two because I'm generally, Sonny, on your side about JVL and the way that he talks about this stuff. On the flip side, though, I do think that the economy has been steadily improving. I think that JVL is right that we've seen tremendous improvement with the economy, with jobs, gas prices down, and on crime. And voters, and it's been this way now for a while. Mm-hmm. And I would say voters, especially people who want to find a reason to vote for Trump, who are doing just fine, like tell you that their particular financial situation is great, but that the overall economy is terrible. And like, that's not true. And like, if I were, I would say that Biden going into this election, if he was 20 years younger, I think he would have a lot to talk about with this economy. And like, I think being able to say Trump mismanaged COVID, that led us to the supply chain problems and the inflation that we saw. We have been steadily solving this. Prices are still too high, especially when it comes to things like rent. And, you know, like, but like we have made a lot of progress. And what you don't want is Trump to come in here, give big tax cuts to the rich and, you know, just I think there's a message there that's fine. I just think they have a tough time making it. And I do think that you do have to be sensitive to the fact that voters still feel these things, but also there's a lot you can do to try to turn the vibes around by telling a positive story about how far we've come.
Why isn't the crime stuff resonating? Because the other thing is so inflation spikes under Biden. Inflation comes in Biden's year. It starts the end of year one. It's really year two of his presidency. Year three then is the receding of inflation. We're still experiencing that now. The crime stuff all happened in 2020. The final year of Donald Trump's term is when violent crime takes its biggest one-year leap since like the 70s. And Biden comes into office and crime has gone. It was basically flat for year one and then went way down in year two, way down in year three, and seems to be going way, way down in year four as well. We're seeing for both 2023 and 2024, some of the largest year-on-year declines ever in violent crime. Why is it that Biden doesn't get credit for that? Because with inflation, the answer is, that's because the inflation happened on Biden's term, and so he doesn't get credit for it going away because he gets blamed for it happening. The crime stuff all happened under Trump. Why doesn't Biden get credit for it going away under him?
I don't, I have not dug into the crime numbers, but the violent crime is obviously like the thing we all look at. That's the scariest. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was happening, like I know in DC, tons of carjackings, like carjackings had gone through the roof and sort of theft, like private property thefts were really up. And so I think that there continued to be a sense that things were more dangerous than they had been. Also, the aftermath, I mean, again, I'll just talk about my own personal experience, but the aftermath of the pandemic, there was just like a lot of unhoused folks that had like set up encampments in a lot of places, like around DC. There were just like a lot of tent cities. There's also a lot of, I was just thinking this as I drove down today, there's still a ton of businesses have gone out of business. And so there's a lot of places that are boarded up. It still feels more ghost townish than it used to, right? So like all the Starbucks are out of business downtown, like a lot of stuff, we're like looking at office space and it's just, there's whole parts and neighborhoods in DC that you're like, well, I don't want to, it used to be great. And like, you don't want to be here anymore. And so there's that sense of, and like, this is where, when they were talking about moving, sorry for national people for all the DC talk, but they were talking about moving the sports teams out of the downtown DC area because there was just, it like didn't feel safe to bring your kids and like be there to take the metro late at night, coming home from games. And like, that's true. And so they almost moved to Virginia until the city finally like got it together and won them back. But like, that stuff is just real. That's what people feel. Our producer just said carjackings are up 93% since 2019 across 10 cities. And the carjacking stuff has just been all over. Like I behave differently than I did in terms of making sure that my doors are locked and things like while I'm driving. And so I like when people are changing their behavior because they are worried about something happening, there's like a long tail on something like that, I think, is how I would explain it. Can
I suggest one possible answer here? And I don't know that this is the actual answer, but I do think it's at least part of it. Crime in, I mean, again, we could talk about murder and rape and assault and all that, but as Sarah mentions, the carjacking thing is very real and people are very worried about it. But there's also this sense of, as Sarah says, in DC and in New York, I think as well, a sense of things being slightly out of control, on the subway in New York or on the streets in D.C. with the encampments. And you see the videos of the kids running into the CVS and pulling everything, blah, blah, blah. And I do wonder how much of that is affecting the coverage of this issue from people who live primarily in New York and D.C., right? So like most of the media lives in, I mean, I don't know about most. A large percentage of the media that is shaping the national narrative of the political discussion lives in New York City and Washington, D.C. And I do think that those two cities in particular, and then you can throw on top of that, you can throw the anti-Israel protests, that sort of thing, creating the sense of like unrest and, chaos and blah, blah, blah. I do wonder how much of that is driving this narrative of crime, this sense of crime, particularly in the media, which filters down, of course, to the people.
Can I just add to this? So I was in St. Louis. This was a while back, maybe almost a year ago. And I was in St. Louis for a conference, and we had this like great time in St. Louis. We like went out on a beautiful like riverboat, and I was like, oh, St. Louis is so nice. And then I had family, or I wasn't like St. Louis is so nice, but I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't feel unsafe. I didn't feel like it was a hellhole. And then I went to visit family who lived about an hour away, and they were talking about how they would never go into St. Louis. Like that St. Louis, like you could not walk around St. Louis without being murdered. And I was sort of like, and it's funny, they had the news on all the time. Like, and when you're watching the local news, like so like, I don't know what the crime rate is in St. Louis, and maybe I think there are certain parts of St. Louis that are like, you would not go into. But like there is a weird perception from people who feel like I would get murdered if I set foot in this city versus the reality, which is like, you'll be okay.
Same for New York. This is like somebody on, I think it was in like a Reddit thread or something. Somebody somewhere was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be taking my kids to New York City. Any suggestions on places we could go that are like safe to walk around and stuff?" And I was like, "Yes, it's called New York City. Just go to Manhattan, you'll be fine, or go to Brooklyn, you'll be fine. Like it's fine." I want to read something to you. This is from the New York Times 2 weeks ago. This is a headline. Even as violent crime drops, lawlessness rises as an election issue. As of us sitting down to tape today, the New York Times still has not run a story on the crime stats put out by the FBI earlier this week.
Yeah.
I just don't know what to do with all these things. Like you guys talk about carjackings. I haven't looked into carjackings. I do know a little bit about property theft related to cars itself, not carjackings, which are a separate kind of property theft because they involve assault. But so we had a big rise in carjackings in car theft, again, separate from carjackings, and I believe it was 2023. And that was almost all due to Hyundais because there was an exploit found in the Hyundai security system. And so people realized, oh, we could just take these. And so, you could really be worried about your car if you drove a Hyundai and everybody else was fine. I'd have to look into carjackings to see. But like the numbers are the numbers. Like property theft is down. I'll go pull it up. Property crime is down 15%.
So you mentioned the headline about lawlessness. Lawlessness is a sense. Again, this is vibes. We're talking about the vibes. And when you watch the news, what do you see? What did you see last month, the month before? You saw protests across college campuses, stories about, kids taking it over and sitting in, and cops rolling in and, and whomping on people and blah, blah, pulling them out. And like, again, that's a feeling of lawlessness. I don't know that corresponds to a sense of I'm not worried about walking onto a college campus and having some pro-Hamas guy whack me with a brick. But like at the same time, I watch this and I think like, oh, there's this feels like 1972. This feels like reading David Frum's book on the 1970s, watching some of the things that are happening right now, minus the like wave of domestic terror bombings that people forget about.
I feel like people are acting as if it's like the 1970s, like it's 1972, but the reality is nowhere near that.
Yeah,
and
it
in
might
fact,
be, but
it's all going reverse. Like again, the crime wave is receding.
Sure. You're asking for a lot of perspective from people. And I'll give you another example just on the lawlessness thing. Every time I go into a CVS, I'm like, oh, you can't get anything off the shelf. Like it's all now encased behind, and you've got to like call somebody to get it. That is new, right? It's new. You go into grocery stores, and I don't know if I went into a grocery store so I don't know where you are. I will tell you that in DC,
New York City, Sarah. That's where
you do not live in New York City. Stop
it. You live in a suburb of New Jersey, and great. I'm glad they don't put things behind glass cases because it makes it borderline impossible to shop at a CVS or some grocery stores where they put a bunch of stuff, like especially things like shampoo and like it's like weird things. It's like having somebody come get you deodorant out is like pretty annoying and gives you this sense of like what, and then you see it. I was like driving down the other day and saw a kid running from the security with a bunch of toilet paper. And so like, or you watch people walk in and just like take stuff out of a Starbucks off the like shelf, like, right in front and like walk out, and the kind of people who work there just being like, ugh. And so I think that, and again, I don't think that is not to say that like crime is falling and that like lots has been done. Like the encampments that were in DC aren't there anymore. They have like re-sodded and it looks very beautiful and it's good. Like it is changing. But I'm just trying to explain what I think voters react to.
I'll tell you why. Because America just wants Trump, and people are looking around for any possible justification they can give to themselves to do it.
I don't know. I mean, again, maybe that is it. But again, we're talking about vibes here, and like what I don't think we can understate the importance of social media on this. What goes viral on TikTok and Twitter and whatever. It's videos of people getting beat up. Right? What goes viral? It's images of like swarms of kids running into the Gucci store and running out with bags. Like that's the sort of thing that people see a lot of. You see enough of it and you're like, wow, things are bad out there. I would never go to downtown Chicago or, the into San Francisco or wherever. They say this sitting in their, house in Sioux Falls or whatever, and they're like, but it's again, it's just when you say the word lawlessness. The word lawlessness is a very interesting one because it's not like I'm specifically worried about crime. It's a sense. It's like a sense.
Sarah, we were in San Francisco not long ago. It was great.
It was.
Yeah. Anyway, Sarah, would you like to give us a word from our other sponsor?
I would. There are lots of different ways to try to get a better night's sleep. Some people use noise machines, others wear a sleep mask, or, they don't snack at night. But a truly remarkable way to transform your sleep is with Boll and Branch sheets. We've talked about these 100% organic cotton sheets before on The Next Level. JVL loves them, loves to talk about them, and that's because they really are the best quality. These sheets get more comfortable every time you wash them. They don't have any toxins in them or synthetic pesticides like formaldehyde or other harsh chemicals commonly found in sheets. Is that true? Formaldehyde is in sheets? Gross. And they come in 14 versatile colors in all sizes from twin up to California king. We've got a king bed. We love our sheets, our Boll and Branch sheets. And by the way, Boll & Branch also has the airiest blankets, most cloud-like duvets, fluffiest pillows, and so much more. In fact, I just got a new blanket that's called the Waffle Bed Blanket, and I love it. I don't even use it on my bed, actually. I keep using it on the couch because it's so soft and great to hang out with. So sleep better with the softest, most breathable bedding from Boll & Branch. Go to bollandbranch.com/nextlevel for 15% off your first sheet set plus free shipping. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/nextlevel for 15% off. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
That waffle blanket's really great as a throw blanket on the sofa.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Okay, so we had some more hot Alito family content this week. We got hidden microphone ambush interviews where a woman posing as a conservative journalist was at a big lawyer fancy event, and she talked to John Roberts and Sam Alito and tried to provoke them into saying outrageous things. And I don't like this sort of thing. I don't like it, period. I don't mind it's the posing as somebody you're not that I don't like. Like it is fine, I think, to record what people are saying. I mean, not fine. Maybe it's illegal in some places, right? There's a questionable legality on when you can record people without their consent. But basically, like hot mics, like hearing what somebody is saying unfiltered, I'm all for that. It's the prompting of them that makes me a little queasy, because you really do never know if the person who is like interacting with you is doing, because God knows I've done this before, but like, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. Excuse me, I got to go get,
Same.
So, with that said, I think Justice Roberts said all the things that you want somebody to say in this situation, and which, frankly, he's basically exhibited in his tenure on the bench. And he was like, no, don't talk like that. That's stupid. That's, things are always bad and contentious. And you don't want me up there trying to save American morality. That's not what the Supreme Court... It was just great. He was great. And Justice Alito was less great.
Very less great.
Very less great.
So we're just on this idea though of like whether or not it's cool to do this. The thing I don't like it for a bunch of reasons, but the thing I don't like about the prompting is that like a bunch of the reporting says that Alito said a thing that he didn't actually say. He agreed with the thing she said. And I will just tell you this point about when you are in a crowd and a bunch of people are coming up and talking to you, which, happens now somewhat, right? And people say things and you like half the time you can only hear them so well, like it's loud. And so people say things and you are trying to be generous and engage with people and you are not going to have a long conversation. And so like, I think that it is not a great way to evaluate somebody's positions on things when they are like agreeing with something somebody else said. That being said, I also agree that like what Roberts said is like how you want a Supreme Court justice to behave in these situations, right? Like there is the thing about Alito and Thomas is that people keep having a debate about whether or not like it has to be, it's enough to rise to the level of recusal, whatever. It's different. That's different from a debate about, is this how we want our Supreme Court justices to sound and behave? Is like the thing that Alito said is very consistent with what we have now seen from him, and heard on other speeches he's given that have come out where you're like, well, this is not the judicial temperament I was hoping for. This person is a rank partisan. He sounds like a rank partisan. He feels like a rank partisan, and that does undermine one's faith in what the Supreme Court justices are doing. And so, to me, it was more just like, this is consistent with who we are seeing this person to be. Yeah.
Taken in a vacuum, I might be like, well, I don't know,
That's right.
But man, with all we've seen, and especially with his lying, this is again, to go back to the flag story, for me, the big part of the flag story is not just the fact that Mrs. Alito is basically the same person as Ginny Thomas, it turns out. The big story is that Sam Alito, to quell this, went out to Fox News and basically sold them a bunch of things in a timeline which is objectively not true. And if he was concerned about the perception of his impartiality, he would have sat down with a real and credible news source, and he would have had them try to, corroborate his timeline, and he did not. And when the New York Times went and did actual reporting and, looked at contemporaneous text messages and interviewed a bunch of people who are eyewitnesses, almost everything he told them was a lie. And if the stuff that wasn't a lie was misleadingly phrased. And that's a problem, I think. Like, Matt Schlapp can behave like Matt Schlapp. A Supreme Court justice can't. Or I should say, they can, but they shouldn't. Like, we're not supposed to expect them to behave like they're the head of CPAC.
Yeah, this is cumulative context. And I think a lot of times when I see people defending Alito or Thomas, they do it in a vacuum and they ignore the cumulative context.
Sonny, what are your thoughts?
I have no strong thoughts on this. I find a lot of the controversy surrounding the Supreme Court justices slightly overblown. And I continue to feel that this way with the Alito story, frankly.
Tell me more.
I listened to I saw the headlines. I was like, oh, those things sound bad that he said. And then, like you said, Sarah, I listened to the tape. It was like, oh, he didn't actually really say those things. He was, I just don't, and the flag, I find the flag story to be totally uninteresting, except in the sense that, like, everybody has somebody in their life who does things with their neighbors that they don't necessarily want them to do. And I'm maybe I'm a sucker, but I do not think that the flag was placed to signal displeasure with the election results not being overturned on January 6th. I'll put it that way. That is. I do not think that is what Mrs. Alito was up to, and she had I don't know. I just don't care. I just don't care about this.
You know what?
Story,
Sonny, hold on, Sonny. I'm sorry. I'm gonna rip you right now.
Please,
okay?
do.
And this is so classic anti. It's like the second your team gets caught being like real shitheads, you're like, I don't care about this. This is a non-story. This is so classic for this crowd of people who is like, okay, I don't want to defend Trump. Like, I'm not going to defend Trump. I'm an anti. But like the libs going after my Supreme Court justices, I'm going to tell you how bored I am. There's a whole bunch of people who do this, and I find it ridiculous.
I'm sorry. I just don't care. I do not care about the flags. I don't care about the flag story.
You don't care? Cool.
I don't.
Do you see why somebody else might? Would you care if Sotomayor was just throwing up Black Lives Matter flags right after they like burned down, tore down a statue or something? I might.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that would be a different situation. I don't know. I possibly. I guess. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can't.
You,
What's
son?
that?
The Alito lying while trying to clean it up doesn't bother you?
Again, no. It honestly does not.
Okay.
Nothing about this story is. I just am not. I am totally nonplussed by the story. I find it largely manufactured. I'll put it that way. I find this whole thing just totally manufactured. Don't care about it. Don't care about it.
By who? The deep state?
Yeah.
By the deep state libs who are trying to undermine the Supreme Court so they can pack it. No, I just don't. Every single one of these stories is like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Oh, Clarence Thomas is taking money from some rich guy. Okay, he's not actually taking money. It's whatever. But like whatever. I see these stories and every single one I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of bad. And then I read, I'm like, I'm not.
I don't know. The Clarence Thomas stuff seems pretty bad. He went around
Ginny Thomas texting on January 6th.
I'm sorry. You're talking about the wives of the Supreme Court justices, right?
Well, in the case of Clarence Thomas, okay, in the case of Clarence Thomas and Ginny Thomas texting Mark Meadows throughout the insurrection to be like, we must overturn this election. that is directly about Ginny Thomas. The Alito stuff is a question of, he says it's her. So like, maybe, but I am finding the more he talks, to JVL's point, the less credible he sounds. And it's like, also, here's the thing. Again, with the cumulative context, you now have multiple Supreme Court justices who, and like, this is on top of like the leaking of the Roe decision, like,
and the theft of a Supreme Court seat.
Well,
pick which one.
That's on the
right?
that's on Congress. That's on the Senate.
No,
okay?
but I'm saying, but this is the context of like people's vibes about the court, right? Like, hey, wait a minute, hold on, the court.
But like, I'm
doesn't
pretty
seem
defensive
right.
actually. So I'm more defensive of the court. Like, I sort of think like, I think what happened was in bad faith. I think it has contributed a tremendous amount to the discord in our society, and also like Supreme Court justices' confirmations as blood sport, which I think is very bad for us. That being said, I don't walk around talking about the stolen Supreme Court seat. Like, I don't carry that
I'm just adding
as
more
an enormous
context.
grievance. What I
Just
do,
adding context.
what it does matter to, because the Supreme Court, done, I think, in the spirit of democracy, is one in which what they say when they are confirmed, that like, even if they are appointed by somebody, even if they are, they have a conservative judicial philosophy or they're originalists, that you trust them to have this judicial temperament, to be above the political fray. And I think what we see with both Alito and Thomas is that they are very much engaged in the political fray, in like, not in concrete and ways that I would judge to be deeply wrong. Like Thomas, I think that you can both, with the cumulative context of, I think you can both question his judgment a great deal in taking all of this, the payments and the trips and all of that. And then you can also say, and your wife was like, and to that, if you're a serious person, even though you're like, look, my wife did this, not me, you might be like, boy, because I have judicial temperament, understand that I now can't rule on a case that's in front of people when my wife did this. And if you're Alito, you say, gosh, 4 days after the insurrection where people were attacking police officers with the upside down flags, and the symbology of that day really did, the upside down flags became a thing that people did to signify their sense of solidarity with the insurrectionists. Boy, would it be a bad thing if that was flying outside of my house. Like, to me, the lack of judgment, and I use that term in both meanings, is outrageous. I couldn't just not care because it is doing great damage to who we are as a country, that we can't have faith, even if we don't like its partisan nature, but like faith that it's going to like act in good faith.
Okay. I understand why people are upset about that. How about that? I can understand why people are upset about it. It doesn't bother me.
It would have, I mean, look, Joe Biden could have removed Weiss from the U.S. Attorney's Office when he took over as president, because that's a thing that everybody does. And if he had done that, it would have been totally he was allowed to do that legally, but it would have been bad.
Fine. What is your solution? I want to know what your guys' solution to this is. Is the solution impeach Alito and
there
Thomas?
There is no solution.
Kick him out.
That's
or
the problem.
Is it to pack the court? Do we add an extra 3
members
to the court?
What
is the actual solution here?
I do think it's recusal.
That's
it's
the
recusal.
problem. The problem is that there's no remedy because we're discovering that it's all on the honor system. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why we're that's why we're upset
recusal from
about
what
it.
though? I mean, so you think Alito should recuse himself from any case involving Trump?
Yeah, so like from the immunity case that's in front of him right now.
Okay.
Trump being immune from prosecution, because that directly relates to what happened on January 6th.
Should Thomas as well?
Yes.
100%.
I cannot believe Thomas has not recused himself with his wife texting,
it is
coup
crazy.
harder.
Okay. It is
crazy. I mean, out of control.
Yeah. But the problem is that there's no remedy. And this is just where we are. And it's real bad. It's real bad. And it's going to be worse if Trump wins and he appoints 3 more justices. Because that's the world we live in. If Trump gets another term, he was likely to have 6 appointees on the Supreme Court. Good luck, America. All right, what do we want to talk? Do we want to talk last topic? David French or Truth Social?
Truth Social. David French is good, and everybody who cancels him is bad.
Yes. Truth Social.
Sustained. All right, Sonny, go. Truth Social.
Well, you wrote a great newsletter. You should tell the people about your newsletter. That was really good. I read it as a regular reader of Jonathan Last's content. I read it and was very amused by it. But the long and the short of it is the people who invested in Truth Social think their shares should be worth more for this nonsense company that makes zero money.
And what we have Jason Leopold from Bloomberg filed a bunch of FOIA requests for the SEC to see if there had been any SEC complaints about Truth Social. And I mean, I don't want to mind read, but I suspect that Leopold was thinking, oh, there are going to be a bunch of people complaining that, hey, this company's a giant fraud. And instead what he got was a bunch of complaints from people saying, you have to outlaw short selling. There are dark pools of naked short sellers who are illegally conspiring to suppress the price of this great company because they hate Donald Trump. And it's and also like and if you don't, I'm going to be every one of these emails is this close to saying, let me speak to your manager. It is unbelievable. And
I mean, it's fascinating too, because it is like this. I don't think it is undersold exactly that Trump is running like the most effective cult of personality in the recent history of the United States. But like, it is a total reality distortion mind job that he is doing on all of these people, that like they all think that because Donald Trump is doing this ridiculous social media company where he is the only person on it, as far as I can tell, that it should be I mean, he was the biggest thing on Twitter, and Twitter's worth billions of dollars. If
I could just level set here. So for last quarter, gross revenues. Sarah, would you like to guess what the gross revenues of this company are? Truth Social.
-1.
No, revenue, not net. Just how many dollars they took in, period, irrespective of spending.
12 million.
I think
800,000.
800,000, yeah. It's in the news. 800,000. $800,000.
Truth Social took in less revenue than a great many Substacks. There are dozens of people on Substack who simply write newsletters by themselves from their living room who brought in more revenue last quarter than Donald Trump's social media company.
What are their expenses?
And their net $327 million. Now you look at that number and you tell me, how in God's name did they spend $327? And the answer is that money is obviously all going out the door to friends and relations.
Yeah, where is that money going?
It is not showing up in the product. I'll tell you that.
Advertising? I don't even know what would they spend what could you possibly spend $327 million on that website? It's not design.
Who could say? And its total market capitalization, $8 billion.
Should be higher.
Should be higher
because of the naked short sellers.
So it's
this is like
short sellers. Are they naked? What is a naked short seller? They're just. I
don't know. This is a industry term. I don't understand it. But
they're not being forced to cover.
They're not covering it. Yeah. No, but this is like the GameStop thing, but a million times dumber somehow. Like, at least GameStop is a real business and they have locations and it's a garbage business. Like, I can't emphasize enough how terrible GameStop is. But like, it's a real place and they have real locations, they have real employees, they have real stock. It's like, okay, I could see a universe in which this company should be making more money and it should be worth more. But all you have to do is look at Truth Social and realize that nobody is there, nobody's talking about it, and nobody's advertising on it, nobody wants anything to do with it, and think like, well, of course that's a company that should be, I mean, frankly, it should be worth more than Twitter at this point, because again, they got Twitter's biggest guy. And he's exclusive on Truth Social. And it's just like, the whole thing is hilarious.
You know what, though? To be fair, the real value of Truth Social is that Donald Trump bleats there and nobody sees it. And except for what they grab and put on Twitter, he basically bellows into the ether, and it allows him to have more. It allows him to obscure just how deranged he is. And the best thing that ever happened to Donald Trump's future political career, was getting kicked off Twitter.
100%. 100%.
So one of the things he does there, it is because his account sends out so many bleats and their search function is so broken, it is basically impossible to find anything that he's ever said there. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't get grabbed in the moment and highlighted and archived by somebody, you just can't find it. And I know this because I went looking for something that he bleated out. But one of the things he does is he spams his own account. And so he will send within the same minute 60 or 100 tweets, which are
tweet a second,
which are endorsements of, candidates, Republican candidates for everything, for sheriff, for county clerk, for landowner, for Ohio 6, et cetera, et cetera. And the endorsements are all like cut and paste. It's like, person X is a great American and patriot, blah, 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 blah. Vote for person X and help make America great again. And these things are, I don't want to say they're pay to play, but it is very clearly not for the purpose that they'll ever be seen, but so that the candidates can clip them and put them on their advertising. Right. That's what
I'm fascinated by this because there are other politicians who have done things like this where they will put together a mailer or something and say like, I, well-known House member from California, endorse these people from my party and their primaries. And it is essentially pay to play. It's like you donate a certain amount. You donate a certain amount to the candidate's campaign fund, which then gets funneled to the candidate's daughter, and then like that is how the mailer gets put together. And I assume there has to be something similar going on here. My big question is, does that generate more revenue than the $800,000 than the site itself does? Because I would bet I'd bet decent money it does. I bet decent money it does.
I bet my house it does.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and nobody cares. Nobody cares about any of that. That's
nobody cares about any of that because again, you don't see it. Like Sarah said, 100% the best thing that Donald Trump can do is not be on Twitter, reminding everybody every single day that he's an insane person. Because you go back to 2016, when did he mount that final little push up in the polls that got him over the hump over Hillary Clinton? It's when he essentially pulled back from Twitter almost entirely and was just doing the, I'm doing campaign rallies.
We like to tell ourselves that, Sonny, but I'm not sure that it's true. We are in the business of looking around for rationalizations about why this utterly irrational thing is happening. The utterly irrational thing being that this election is close. And so we tell ourselves stories that it's because of the carjackings, or it's because, people, the inflation is down and wages are up, but people don't really feel that yet. Or, well, if only Trump was on Twitter, then they would see. And I just don't know how convinced I am about any of this. As I said earlier, I get the sense that there is a percentage of America which just wants Trump back.
Of course, that's true. There is a percentage. Of course, there's a percentage.
40% of the country.
A big percentage.
40, it's 40% of the electorate. It's that's
more,
obvious.
More than that.
It's at least
45.
It's
right?
All right. Well, if we think of
I
America,
don't know. I think Trump's ceiling is 47, and so I think that the number of people who are just, I definitely want Trump. I actually think Trump and only Trump, that's closer to 30%. I want Trump over Biden specifically, gets you up to the 40%, maybe up to, but
but then there's another 4 to 8%.
There is no Republican candidate will ever run in a 2-person race again and get less than 45 or 46% of the vote. That's just how the country is.
But what I'm saying is there's a bunch of people in that, for that space between 40 and 50%. There are a whole lot of people who really want to vote for Trump and are just looking to talk themselves into it.
Well, 100%. Look, we see
I don't know what
this.
to do about that.
we see this even with our never Trump friends who are like, well, I see what's happening on the college campuses and I can't possibly support Biden now. And I was like, that's an interesting, okay. I don't know that makes a lot of sense, but
those
sure.
people are mad at Biden too.
And those people were looking for an excuse to vote for Biden. I mean,
looking at all these people
Trump,
who hate Biden because he has the same policy towards Israel that I have has made me realize that I can't possibly vote for Joe Biden.
There are people who are looking for reasons to talk themselves into it, and that is the system we have. That is the two-party system we have.
Good show, long show. Guys, we'll be back next week with Tim. Bye.